Hello everyone, today we're talking about a pretty unfortunate event that happened in Norway regarding a mass attack with bow and arrows. This is a pretty interesting one. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to comparisons to America and modern gun control, modern police reform. Man armed with bow and arrow kills 5 people in Norway attacks, police say. Now it talks about how this man went on a bow and arrow mass killing spree where he killed 5 people and wounded several others. I believe a police officer is one of the wounded, and yes, it says here that he was an off-duty police officer. The man used a bow and arrow for some of the attacks. Police Chief Ass told reporters. The police were investigating whether other weapons had been used, he said. The man has been apprehended. From the information we now have, this person carried out these actions alone. One of the wounded people was an off-duty police officer. Newspaper VG showed images of an arrow that appears to be stuck in the wall of a wood-paneled building. The death toll was the worst of any attack in Norway since 2011 when someone went on a 77-person spree. The attacks on Wednesday took place over a large area, a municipality of about 28,000 people in southeastern Norway. I understand that many people are afraid, but it's important to emphasize the police are now in control. Following the attacks, the police directorate said it had ordered officers nationwide to carry firearms. Norwegian police are normally unarmed, but officers have access to guns and rifles when needed. Now, I believe it was about a 30-minute period of time from the time that the initial police calls went in to the time that the killer was actually apprehended. So during that period of time, an unarmed police officer who, if he was able to be armed off-duty or all the time while on duty, maybe could have stopped all of this. Norway is not a place where people can usually just walk around and carry firearms legally. What you choose to do illegally, that's entirely up to illegal people. Now, this is an extra precaution. The police have no indication so far that there is a change in the national threat level, and as said that police would investigate whether the attack was regarded to any sort of terrorism. Now, we got to talk about some little things that differ when it comes to America and Norway, because many people are trying to compare these two countries together. Now, Norway has about 5 million people, I believed when I looked up. So about 5 million people in its entire country with a density of about 35 people per square mile. Now, let's compare the county of LA, which has 10 million people. The county of LA has 10 million people with a density of about 8,500 people per square mile. So a difference of 35 people per square mile for a total of 5 million people versus, or one county in America having 8,500 people per square mile and a total density and a total population of 10 million. It's fairly difficult to compare these countries and say that they're similar when you consider that there were about 22 murders in Norway all of last year. Kind of hard to compare a massive country versus a tiny country with very low population density, where it's basically like a tiny farm town spread out over an entire countryside. So it's kind of hard to compare those two things when you talk about actual stats and, oh, look, the last time that there was a big murder in Norway, it was 77 people, but then they did gun control stuff, and now it's totally different. Gun control works. I'm not entirely sure you can make that fair comparison. And then, does gun control actually work? Because gun control, from the people that are brainwashed into following the people that actually run the gun control groups, they believe that gun control is about protecting people, and that if you ban the guns, people won't find a way to do these horrible, terrible things. We know that's not true, whether it's acid, trucks, bow and arrows, knives. It's just crazy to see that the response from the Europeans is almost always, let's ban that thing that was used. Let's ban that. Now we have cities and countries in Europe that are banning the possession of butter knives without a license. Oh, wait, you got a license for that, mate? I can't really do a European or Australian accent. It's just not really my repertoire, not something that's in my skill set. So it's very hard to compare these two countries, but we've seen what the articles say. We've seen that these arguments don't necessarily work. Let's take a look at what the internet has to say about this. So this was a Reddit article that I'm going to be reading from you here, and I'm just going to read to you some of the comments that I saw that I just thought were choice. Some of them bring up good points, some of them are just the exact thing you would expect from a soy-drinking Redditor. Currently confirmed information, bow and arrow, not a crossbow. Started at a local shop, 4 confirmed dead. That was at the time, now it's 5. and then several wounded. One man arrested, several wounded. Norwegian police temporarily armed. No current active search for more assailants. And now here's a comment from someone that says, I know this is serious, but as an American, I love the phrase police temporarily armed. I actually chuckled at that part too. In Los Angeles, it would be police temporarily unarmed when forgotten in front seat of car. This is my favorite part about this. We'll talk about that first comment in a second. But, the amount of stories that you see of police officers leaving their guns in the shitter. Now, I understand the reason you see it more often with police officers is because police officers, by and large, carry guns, and there's more of them, and many of them might not be gun people, but are forced to carry a gun by trade and occupation. And that's why we might see more often in the news, police officer leaves gun in bathroom stall than private citizen leaves gun in bathroom stall. But again, why do they keep leaving their guns everywhere? Why do police keep getting their guns stolen? I don't know. But people are actually celebrating the fact that the police were temporarily armed, ignoring the fact that during this killing spree, someone had free reign over everyone else's will and desire to live for about 30 or so minutes, maybe even longer than that. Let me ask you, if you are a gun person, do you think that having a gun would be better than not having a gun in a weird situation like this? Now, I know a lot of people will say, oh, you're paranoid for having a gun. I'm not paranoid. I mean, what do I have to be afraid of? I have a gun. I'm kidding. I'm joking. Carrying a gun is a very small inconvenience to my day generally, but what a gun does is allows you to have the ability to not be at the mercy of someone else. And we're talking about whether it's just a physically larger person than you, especially if you're a woman or if you're disabled or if you're just smaller in general. You are at the mercy of other people. You live because others allow you to live. When you have the means to protect yourself, you no longer are at the mercy of other people like this person was and these people were. We saw a police officer that was unarmed. In America, an armed police officer, if they chose to do something, unlike Broward County sheriffs and some others that, they could have stopped all of this. This could have been completely stopped if that off-duty police officer had a firearm on them. But that's not the country they live in. And, it's hard to compare in any direction when you consider that Norway last year had 22 murders. Kind of hard to compare that to America, where we have some cities that make up like 90% of all of the murders and violent crime in the States. But you just gotta love how people will always cheer on the fact that, oh, the police were unarmed. They want to defund the police, take away their guns, and also take away your ability to protect yourself. But nowhere throughout this do they actually propose a real viable method to take the guns away from violent criminals. I think that's my favorite part about all this. Norwegian police temporarily armed. Americans so confused. Yes, because if the police were armed, and if that off-duty police officer were armed, a lot of this could have been stopped. Now then at the bottom here, we have my last comment that I want to highlight. 77 killed last time, 5 killed this time. Well done, Norway. Laws to restrict weapons work. 5 dead in a mass shooter is what America calls Tuesday, and might not even make the news. Had this person been armed with something that fired faster, this likely would have been a much worse tragedy. Yes, 77 is bigger than 5. However, to call it just a normal Tuesday, I think that we need to talk about this for a second. The modern news media is a cancer. The modern news media in America is just heinous. Things like this make the news, but only if certain prerequisites are met. So if the shooter was white, if the shooter was, more conservative, and it was more right-wing leaning ideals that led them to, or that the person believed in, regardless if they led them to doing those terrible acts. If you can meet both of those criteria, it'll make the news. It'll make national fucking headlines. However, if we're talking about any sort of urban city like Chicago or Detroit, and it's not a white person committing some sort of weird right-wing terror attack, it will disappear out of the news almost immediately. This kind of stuff pisses me off because they act like this is an everyday occurrence that happens in America, and it's not. It's really not. It's just that the media loves to show these fucking scumbags' faces and make them like heroes to all the other weird incels on the internet that want to go do some crazy shit. The media is cancer. And I'm so tired of them glorifying these kinds of events. I'm still so blown away that people can be so focused on the idea of simultaneously wanting to take all of your means to protect yourself away and wanting to disarm the police from being able to protect you when you have been disarmed, and then thinking that that'll solve all the problems. They won't have to worry about it. You want to know why? Because the guns are gone. You can't buy a gun, therefore the criminals are just going to give them up, right? It blows me away that people are still so focused on the idea of having the government be the ones to protect them, but then also wanting the government to not have the tools to protect them, and then not wanting you to have the tools to protect yourself. It's just crazy. It blows me away that that's what modern liberal Democrats think in America, but it is what it is. You guys know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace.